11 most infamous actors in Hollywood history. Fame can hide almost anything. A cruel decision, a secret addiction, a private accusation whispered for decades. In Hollywood, one powerful name could silence a witness, reshape the headlines, or bury a scandal beneath applause before the public ever learned the truth. On screen, they played heroes, rebels, comedians, and romantic legends. Behind the cameras, some left fractured families, terrified colleagues, bitter rivalries, and disturbing allegations. Their images were carefully protected, while the darker stories survived in memoirs, courtrooms, interviews, and memories that refused to disappear. Today on Black Hollywood Uncut, we are pulling back the curtain on 11 of Hollywood's most infamous actors. Stay until the very last second, because the final revelations may completely change how you see these legends. Subscribe to Black Hollywood Uncut and hit the notification bell. Charlie Chaplin, age 88 in 1977. Charlie Chaplin became one of cinema's first global superstars by turning poverty, loneliness, and humiliation into laughter. Born in London in 1889, he rose from a childhood marked by instability to create the Little Tramp, a character whose bowler hat, cane, and wounded dignity became recognizable across the world. Films such as The Kid, City Lights, Modern Times, and The Great Dictator established him not merely as a comedian, but as an actor, director, writer, producer, and composer who helped define the language of motion pictures. Yet the tenderness Chaplin projected on screen existed beside a private life that remains deeply controversial. He married 4 times, and 3 of those marriages began with women who were teenagers. Mildred Harris was 16 when they married in 1918. Lita Gray was 16 when she married the 35-year-old Chaplin in 1924 after becoming pregnant. His 4th wife, Una O'Neill, was 18 when she married him in 1943. Chaplin was 54. These facts do not require exaggeration. Even when judged within the standards of early Hollywood, the age gaps and power imbalance raise serious questions about consent, celebrity influence, and the vulnerability of young performers. The original transcript, however, distorts important details. Una was Chaplin's 4th wife, not his 3rd, and she remained with him until his death, raising 8 children with him. It is also too simplistic to claim that Chaplin routinely discarded women once they aged, or that Una's later struggles were definitively caused by their marriage. Those interpretations belong to biographers and commentators, not established fact. His personal history should be examined critically, but not rewritten as psychological certainty. Chaplin's reputation was further complicated by political suspicion, a widely publicized paternity case, and accusations that he sympathized with communism. When he traveled to Britain in 1952, American authorities revoked his re-entry permit, and he settled permanently in Switzerland. Years later, Hollywood welcomed him back, awarding him an honorary Academy Award in 1972. Charlie Chaplin died on December 25, 1977, at 88. His legacy remains divided between artistic genius and troubling private choices. The Tramp taught generations to recognize humanity in the forgotten, but the man behind that character reminds us that brilliance does not erase accountability, and laughter does not silence the questions history leaves behind. John Wayne died age 72 in 1979. John Wayne did not merely play the American frontier. For millions of viewers, he became its face. Born Marion Robert Morrison in Iowa, he spent decades portraying soldiers, sheriffs, ranchers, and solitary men who seemed incapable of fear. Films such as Stagecoach, Red River, The Searchers, Rio Bravo, and True Grit transformed him into one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars. His walk, voice, and unwavering screen presence created an image of masculine certainty that survived long after the Western's golden age. He won the Academy Award for Best Actor for True Grit, but his influence extended far beyond awards. John Wayne became a cultural symbol, and that made the man behind the symbol increasingly controversial. The original transcript attempts to expose Wayne's darker side through his supposed feud with Clark Gable, but it confuses several important facts. Wayne and Gable did not work together in Hondo. That film starred Wayne and was directed primarily by John Farrow. The conflict involving Gable, Ava Gardner, and director John Ford occurred during the production of Mogambo in 1953. According to Wayne's daughter Asa, Gable's clashes with Ford influenced Wayne, whose fierce loyalty to the director led him to criticize Gable, despite having no major personal dispute with him. Wayne reportedly called Gable an idiot. But this second-hand account reveals loyalty, arrogance, and Hollywood tribalism, not proof of evil behavior. The more consequential controversy lies in Wayne's public politics. He became one of Hollywood's most visible conservative anti-communists, helped establish the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, supported the House Un-American Activities Committee, and defended the blacklist era that damaged the careers of artists accused of left-wing sympathies. His later public comments about race and American history also remain deeply criticized. These positions were not simply private opinions. Because Wayne possessed enormous cultural power, they helped shape a vision of America that many admired, and others experienced as exclusionary. Yet reducing John Wayne to a villain would be as simplistic as treating his screen image as reality. Colleagues remembered generosity as well as stubbornness. Audiences saw courage, while critics saw mythology built around conquest, authority, and silence. He died from stomach cancer on June 11, 1979, at 72. John Wayne's legacy remains powerful because it is unresolved. He represented the America Hollywood wanted to celebrate. Fearless, decisive, and larger than life. But history keeps asking who was missing from that picture, and what happened when the hero's certainty left no room for another truth. Bette Davis died age 81 in 1989. Bette Davis entered Hollywood with none of the softness studios expected from a conventional leading lady. Born Ruth Elizabeth Davis in Massachusetts, she built her reputation through intensity, discipline, and a willingness to portray women who were difficult, aging, selfish, wounded, or openly furious. Performances in Of Human Bondage, Jezebel, Dark Victory, Now, Voyager, All About Eve, and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane made her one of the defining actors of classical American cinema. She earned 2 Academy Awards and became famous for eyes that could communicate contempt, fear, and ambition before she spoke a single word. That uncompromising force also shaped her private reputation. Davis was known as a perfectionist who expected directors, actors, and crews to match her level of commitment. Her autobiographies reveal a woman who often viewed life as a battle. She traced part of that drive to her demanding father, who once reminded her that beneath millions of stars she was insignificant. Rather than accepting that lesson quietly, Davis spent her career proving that she could become impossible to ignore. She fought Warner Brothers for stronger roles, challenged the studio system, and refused to disappear when Hollywood began treating older actresses as disposable. Her legendary rivalry with Joan Crawford became the darkest and most marketable chapter of that image. Davis mocked Crawford's vanity and accused her of manipulating Hollywood through glamour and sexuality. During Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, their professional hostility became inseparable from the film's publicity. Later accounts of Hush, Sweet Charlotte described Davis using her influence to isolate Crawford on set, before Crawford left the production and was replaced by Olivia de Havilland. Some stories were amplified by studio publicity and later biographers, but there is little doubt that Davis could be cutting, strategic, and merciless when she believed a rival stood in her way. Still, nothing in the transcript justifies calling her one of Hollywood's most evil actors. Toughness is not the same as cruelty, and professional combat does not erase the barriers she confronted as a woman seeking control in a male-dominated industry. People who worked with her remembered explosive arguments, but also loyalty, humor, generosity, and deep care for trusted friends. Bette Davis died from breast cancer on October 6, 1989, at 81. Her chosen epitaph declared that she had done it the hard way. That sentence captures both the triumph and the cost. She did not ask Hollywood to love her. She demanded that it respect her. And even decades later, the force of that demand still burns through the screen. Lucille Ball, die age 77, in 1989. Lucille Ball became one of the most beloved figures in television history by turning chaos into comedy. With her flame-red hair, fearless physical humor, and perfect sense of timing, she transformed ordinary domestic disasters into scenes audiences never forgot. I Love Lucy made her a household name, but her influence extended far beyond the screen. Through Desilu Productions, the company she built with Desi Arnaz, Ball helped reshape television production and became one of the first women to lead a major American studio. She was not merely a comedian. She was an executive, a producer, and a woman exercising authority in an industry that rarely surrendered control. That authority, however, came with a reputation. Colleagues often described Ball as demanding, direct, and intensely focused on every detail. She expected performers to know their lines, hit their marks, and understand the rhythm of a joke. Guest actor Tony Randall later recalled that many people considered her extremely tough and domineering. Yet he also explained that her instructions saved time because she usually knew exactly what the scene required. That distinction matters. The original transcript presents her forceful personality as evidence of darkness, while Randall's full assessment reveals something more complicated. Ball could intimidate people, but her strictness was closely tied to professional discipline. Behind the confidence was also insecurity. Ball had survived years of rejection before becoming famous, and she understood how quickly Hollywood could turn against an actress, especially as she aged. Her marriage to Arnaz was damaged by his drinking, infidelity, and the pressure of running a growing television empire. Their divorce in 1960 ended one of entertainment's most famous partnerships, but Ball continued moving forward. She purchased Arnaz's share of Desilu and became the first woman to run a major television production company on her own. Her management style was not always gentle. Employees sometimes recalled sharp criticism, sudden anger, and a need to control the room. But there is no credible basis for calling Lucille Ball one of Hollywood's most evil actors. She was a difficult boss to some, a mentor to others, and a perfectionist operating in a business where one failure could erase years of work. Lucille Ball died on April 26, 1989, at 77, following complications from heart surgery. The woman who appeared effortlessly foolish on television had built her success through discipline, risk, and relentless control. Her laughter was spontaneous. The machinery behind it was not. And perhaps that is the real secret of Lucille Ball. Comedy made her look carefree, but survival made her tough. James Dean died aged 24 in 1955. James Dean appeared in only 3 major films, yet he became one of the most permanent faces in American culture. In East of Eden, Rebel Without a Cause, and Giant, he embodied restless youth, emotional isolation, and rebellion against a world that seemed unable to understand him. His performances felt raw because they blurred the line between character and personality. Dean did not move like a polished studio star. He hesitated, mumbled, exploded, and seemed to carry private pain into every frame. When he died in 1955, at only 24, that unfinished quality turned him into a legend. But the romantic image of the sensitive rebel hides a more difficult professional history. Biographers and former colleagues describe Dean as moody, unpredictable, and sometimes openly rude. During stage and television work, he reportedly ignored blocking, changed movements without warning, and made choices that disrupted other performers. Robert Whitehead, who worked on the Broadway production of The Immoralist, later characterized him as deeply uncooperative. Rock Hudson, his co-star in Giant, also remembered Dean as distant and difficult to approach. Those accounts reveal arrogance and instability, but they should not be exaggerated into proof that Dean was evil. He was a young actor under immense pressure, still developing his craft and identity. His improvisational methods sometimes created powerful screen moments, but they could also frustrate directors and leave co-stars struggling to respond. Dean's behavior was part artistic experimentation, part insecurity, and part rebellion against authority. The same qualities that made him magnetic on camera could make him exhausting behind it. The transcript also presents harsh descriptions from people who disliked him, as though they define his entire character. Other colleagues remembered a different Dean, curious, intelligent, playful, and obsessed with photography, music, racing, and performance. He read widely, studied movement, and approached acting with unusual seriousness. His personality was inconsistent because he was still becoming someone when his life abruptly ended. On September 30th, 1955, Dean was driving his Porsche 550 Spyder toward a racing event in California when it collided with another vehicle near Colomé. He died from injuries sustained in the crash. His death froze him forever, as the young outsider America could never watch grow old. James Dean's darker reputation does not come from cruelty on the scale implied by the title. It comes from the collision between myth and memory. The screen preserved his vulnerability. Former colleagues remembered his sharp edges. Somewhere between those two versions was a talented, troubled young man who became immortal before he had the time to become complete. Joan Crawford died age 73. In 1977, Joan Crawford built her legend through reinvention. Born Lucille Fay LeSueur in Texas, she escaped poverty, entered Hollywood as a dancer, and transformed herself into one of the defining stars of the studio era. From glamorous silent pictures to emotionally demanding dramas, Crawford survived changing tastes through discipline and relentless ambition. Her performance in Mildred Pierce earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, while later films such as Sudden Fear and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane proved she could still command the screen after younger stars had replaced many women of her generation. But the carefully controlled public image was shattered after her death. In 1978, Crawford's adopted daughter Christina published Mommy Dearest, alleging that life inside their home had been ruled by fear, punishment, emotional manipulation, and physical abuse. Christina described a mother obsessed with cleanliness, obedience, appearance, and absolute control. The contrast was devastating. The glamorous star admired by millions was presented as a terrifying figure behind closed doors. Those allegations became inseparable from Crawford's name, but they should not be presented as uncontested fact. Christina's brother Christopher reportedly supported her general account, while Crawford's younger adopted daughters, Kathy and Cindy, publicly rejected the portrayal and remembered their mother very differently. Friends, employees, and biographers also offered conflicting versions, some recalling extreme discipline and volatility, others describing generosity, loyalty, and devotion. Because Crawford died before the memoir appeared, she never had the opportunity to answer its detailed accusations publicly. The original transcript goes too far when it treats every allegation as proven and labels Crawford sadistic without qualification. A responsible account must say that Christina alleged abuse and that the family record remains deeply divided. That caution does not erase Christina's testimony. It simply separates documented claims from a final judgment that history cannot deliver with certainty. Joan Crawford died on May 10, 1977. Her exact birth year remains disputed, but using the widely cited 1904 date, she was 73. Her legacy now exists in two competing images: the driven actress who conquered Hollywood, and the frightening mother described in Mommy Dearest. The screen preserved her control. The memoir exposed what may have existed beneath it. And decades later, the truth remains trapped somewhere between fame, family memory, and wounds that never fully closed. Kirk Douglas died age 103 in 2020. Kirk Douglas rose from poverty to become one of the fiercest stars of post-war Hollywood. Born Isur Danielovich to Russian Jewish immigrant parents in New York, he carried an intensity that made even heroic characters feel dangerous. Films such as Champion, The Bad and the Beautiful, Paths of Glory, Lust for Life, and Spartacus established him as an actor of explosive physical and emotional force. He earned 3 Academy Award nominations for Best Actor and later received an honorary Oscar recognizing his long influence on American cinema. Douglas also became celebrated for challenging the Hollywood blacklist. As producer and star of Spartacus, he publicly credited blacklisted screenwriter Dalton Trumbo, helping weaken a system that had destroyed careers and forced artists to work in secrecy. That decision became central to Douglas's public identity. A powerful star willing to confront institutional fear when many others remained silent. But after his death, a far darker allegation moved from Hollywood rumor into public record. In her 2021 memoir, Natalie Wood's sister Lana Wood alleged that Natalie told her Kirk Douglas sexually assaulted her when she was a teenager after a meeting at a Los Angeles hotel. According to Lana's account, Natalie returned deeply distressed, but remained silent because her mother feared retaliation from a powerful studio figure. The allegation was reported by the Associated Press and other major outlets. That accusation must be handled with extreme care. It was not tested in court, no criminal finding was made, and Douglas died before Lana publicly named him. Natalie Wood also died decades before the claim appeared in its complete published form. Therefore, the transcript cannot label Douglas a rapist or present the allegation as legally established fact. The accurate wording is that Lana Wood alleged her sister identified Douglas as the man who assaulted her. The seriousness of the claim should not be minimized, but neither should uncertainty be erased. Kirk Douglas died on February 5, 2020, at the age of 103. His legacy remains unusually divided. He was an acclaimed actor, producer, philanthropist, and a symbol of resistance to the blacklist. Yet the allegation connected to Natalie Wood casts a lasting shadow over that public story. Hollywood once presented Douglas as the man who broke chains in Spartacus. History now asks a far more uncomfortable question. Can an act of public courage coexist with an accusation of private harm? His films remain, his achievements remain, but so does a claim that changed the way many people see the man behind them. Steve McQueen, died age 50 in 1980. Steve McQueen became the face of controlled rebellion. He rarely needed long speeches or dramatic gestures. A stare, a pause, or the sound of an engine was enough. From The Great Escape and The Cincinnati Kid to Bullet, The Thomas Crown Affair, and Papillon, McQueen projected a cold confidence that earned him the nickname the King of Cool. His passion for motorcycles and racing was real, giving his action roles an authenticity few Hollywood stars could imitate. But the silence that made him magnetic on screen also concealed a volatile private life. McQueen's first wife, actress Neely Adams, later described their marriage as passionate but deeply troubled. In her memoir, she wrote about his repeated infidelity, heavy drug use, jealousy, and increasingly unpredictable behavior. One of her most disturbing accounts involved a night when McQueen allegedly pressured her to use cocaine, became paranoid, accused her of being unfaithful, and threatened her with a gun. Because the story comes from Adams's personal recollection, it should be attributed directly to her, rather than presented as an independently proven incident. Still, her testimony depicts a relationship shaped by intimidation and fear. His darker behavior did not erase the loyalty others remembered. McQueen quietly supported the Boys' Republic, the California school for troubled teenagers that had helped him during his own difficult youth. He reportedly requested large quantities of clothing and everyday items from studios, then donated them to the institution. That generosity complicates the image of a man often described as angry, controlling, and emotionally distant. He could show compassion toward vulnerable young people while causing serious pain inside his closest relationships. By the late 1970s, McQueen was facing a different enemy. He was diagnosed with pleural mesothelioma, a rare cancer associated with asbestos exposure. Desperate for recovery, he traveled to Mexico for controversial treatments and later underwent surgery to remove tumors, despite warnings that his heart might not survive. On November 7, 1980, he died from cardiac arrest following the operation. He was 50 years old. Steve McQueen's legacy remains caught between myth and testimony. The camera preserved a man who appeared fearless and completely in control. The accounts from those closest to him reveal something more dangerous: a wounded, charismatic figure whose need for control sometimes became destructive. He could outrun police cars, prison guards, and rival drivers on screen. But away from the spotlight, the darkness followed wherever he went. Jerry Lewis, died age 91, in 2017. Jerry Lewis built an entertainment empire out of chaos. His elastic face, explosive voice, and unpredictable physical comedy made him one of the most recognizable performers of the 20th century. Alongside Dean Martin, he became part of a wildly successful comedy partnership before establishing himself as an actor, director, writer, and producer. Films such as The Bellboy, The Nutty Professor, and The King of Comedy revealed both his comic invention and the loneliness beneath his public persona. His decades of fundraising for the Muscular Dystrophy Association also helped create an image of extraordinary generosity. Behind that image, however, were accounts of cruelty within his own family. His son Joseph Lewis publicly alleged that Jerry subjected him and his brothers to severe physical and emotional abuse during childhood. Their relationship eventually collapsed, and Jerry reportedly removed Joseph from his will. Joseph died from a drug overdose in 2009 at 45. Jerry later acknowledged the guilt he carried, saying he had blamed himself repeatedly, but remorse could not repair a relationship already destroyed. These claims originated with family members and should be presented as allegations and testimony, not as court-established findings. A darker set of accusations emerged after Lewis's death. In 2022, several actresses who had worked with him during the height of his power alleged sexual harassment, assault, humiliation, and professional retaliation. Karen Sharp accused Lewis of touching her sexually and exposing himself after dismissing other people from his office. Hope Holiday alleged that he behaved sexually in front of her without her consent. Other performers described verbal abuse, intimidation, or careers affected after they rejected him. Lewis died before these accusations were publicly assembled, so he never responded to the specific investigation. They remain allegations, but their number and consistency significantly changed public discussion of his legacy. Lewis was also known for controlling his sets with near-total authority. Admirers viewed that intensity as the source of his innovation. Critics saw arrogance, rage, and an inability to tolerate resistance. Both interpretations can exist beside the work. Talent may explain how he gained power, but it does not excuse how that power was allegedly used. Jerry Lewis died from natural causes on August 20, 2017, at 91. His films still influence generations of comedians, and his charitable work reached millions. Yet laughter cannot erase testimony. The disturbing contradiction is what makes his story endure. The man celebrated for helping vulnerable children was accused of causing profound pain behind closed doors. On stage, suffering disappeared when the audience laughed. Offstage, others claimed the suffering had only begun. Mickey Rooney, died, age 93, in 2014. Mickey Rooney spent almost his entire life beneath the lights. Born Ninian Joseph Yule Jr. in Brooklyn, he began performing as a toddler and entered films while still a child. By the late 1930s, the Andy Hardy series, Boys Town, and his musicals with Judy Garland had made him one of the world's biggest box office stars. He could sing, dance, play comedy, and shift into drama with remarkable speed. Hollywood marketed him as the energetic boy next door, but behind that image was a life shaped by excess, unstable relationships, and repeated personal collapse. Rooney married 8 times, and later admitted that gambling and reckless spending destroyed much of the fortune he earned. His professional reputation was also more complicated than the cheerful screen persona suggested. Accounts from colleagues and later biographies described a performer who could be loud, abrasive, egotistical, and difficult when he felt ignored. The original transcript goes further, repeating claims that he used fake auditions to exploit young women and that he had a relationship with Elizabeth Taylor while she was 14. The Taylor story appeared in a posthumous biography and was repeated by entertainment outlets, but it was never independently established. It should therefore be described only as an allegation, not as a proven episode. His life also contained an extraordinary reversal. After decades of playing powerful, fast-talking characters, Rooney appeared before the United States Senate in 2011 and testified that he had become a victim of elder abuse and financial exploitation. He described feeling frightened, trapped, and unable to control his own money or daily life. His testimony helped draw national attention to the silence and shame that often prevent older victims from asking for help. By the time Rooney died of natural causes on April 6, 2014, he was 93, and his once enormous wealth had largely disappeared. Family conflict continued even around his funeral and estate. Mickey Rooney's legacy is filled with contradictions. He was a child star who never escaped show business, a comic symbol of optimism whose private life often descended into chaos, and a man accused of harming others who later spoke publicly about his own vulnerability. His talent survived nearly 9 decades, but behind the endless applause was a performer who spent a lifetime running from consequences, loneliness, and the darkness fame could never completely hide. Faye Dunaway, 85, age now. Faye Dunaway arrived in Hollywood with the face of a classic movie star and the intensity of an actor who seemed unwilling to surrender a single frame. Born Dorothy Faye Dunaway in Florida, she rose from Broadway into the center of the new Hollywood era. Bonnie and Clyde made her an international sensation. The Thomas Crown Affair, Chinatown, and 3 Days of the Condor confirmed her range, while Network earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress. At her peak, Dunaway did not merely portray ambitious women. She made ambition look dangerous. That intensity became inseparable from her off-screen reputation. Directors, actors, designers, and crew members described her as perfectionistic, volatile, and difficult to satisfy. Bette Davis famously named Dunaway when asked about the most difficult people she had worked with. Others recalled delays, confrontations, and an atmosphere in which minor production problems could trigger major arguments. Yet strong women in Hollywood have often been judged more harshly than equally demanding men, making it necessary to separate documented incidents from decades of exaggerated industry gossip. The original transcript includes several allegations. Actress Rutanya Alda said Dunaway struck her for real while filming Mommy Dearest. James Woods claimed she threw an object at him after he improvised a line. Stories from Chinatown accused her of throwing a cup at Roman Polanski after a dispute over bathroom access, though Dunaway later said she did not remember the episode. In 2019, producers dismissed her from the Broadway-bound play Tea at 5 following reports of an altercation with crew members. The producers confirmed that their relationship had ended, but the more sensational details came from anonymous or secondary accounts and must remain framed as allegations. A 2024 documentary added important context. Dunaway openly discussed alcoholism and a later diagnosis of bipolar disorder, saying treatment helped her understand some of her erratic behavior. That explanation does not erase harm, but it complicates the easy image of a cruel Hollywood diva. Now 85, Dunaway remains a living legend whose work still commands attention. She appeared publicly again in 2026 to celebrate Network and reflect on the films that defined her career. Faye Dunaway's story is not simply about bad behavior. It is about brilliance, control, illness, gendered judgment, and the cost of building an identity around perfection. The camera captured elegance. The people around her remembered the pressure behind it. And somewhere between those two images lives the complicated truth of one of Hollywood's fiercest survivors.